Jay Sekulow and Mayor Rudy Giuliani in for Sean Hannity, and we are joined right now by someone that knows a little bit about the topic we've been discussing, among many other things, but especially about this one, and that is our friend, Fox News phenomenal legal analyst, Gregg Jarrett, who's got a great book out, by the way, and you talk about a must-read, The Russian Hoax. Book's done pretty well there, Greg.
Number one on the New York Times bestseller list for 2 weeks in a row so far.
Must kill them.
Yeah.
The Times.
You know, it's got to give them a high-rate fever, over there at the Times.
So, you know the issues we're facing right now as a lawyer,
Sure.
of course, and, and people are saying, why can't you just say, no, we're not going to do it? And, look, there's process in this, and there's considerations you have. One of the reasons is you got a client that says he wants to do it.
Right.
And so ultimately, I said this to our friend Sean Hannity. He said, well, why can't you just say no? I said, well, if I say no and Rudy says no, that's great, but the client has to agree. It's the way it works. But you laid out the case very strongly in your book about the Russian hoax. Let's give the top line on that. Kind of, what do you see as if you were going to name the top four of what I call the parade of horribles here, what would you say?
Well, I would say that once people read the book, they will be absolutely convinced that top officials at the Department of Justice and the FBI abuse their positions of power to subvert the rule of law and undermine the democratic process. They cleared Hillary Clinton even though they knew that there was overwhelming, compelling evidence of her criminality. Comey wrote it down not once but twice, and then had his confederates, Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, sit down at Strzok's computer and expunge the language that was so incriminating. And on the very day that Comey stands in front of television cameras announcing that he's absolving Hillary Clinton because no reasonable prosecutor would bring the case, which was preposterous, Americans didn't know what was happening that moment. In a building in London, Comey's FBI is meeting with Christopher Steele, who's on the FBI payroll, Hillary Clinton payroll. He composed the totally fabricated dossier, the anti-Trump, alleging collusion, that Putin and Trump had been colluding for 5 to 8 years before the 2016 election. It was utterly preposterous.
Greg raises, Mayor, the issue here, because I think this is one that sometimes gets lost in this process. When the former FBI director, then the FBI director, James Comey, makes the statement, the grand pronouncement that no reasonable prosecutor would move forward on a prosecution. First of all, he was the director of the FBI. That's
he shouldn't have been even pronouncing on that. No FBI director, in my memory, has ever given a press conference and described the facts of a case in which he's declining prosecution, and he doesn't get to decline prosecution.
No.
I did when I was U.S. Attorney, not him. I would have gone totally nuts if he did it to me when I was U.S. Attorney.
And it's the reason he
got
probably
fired.
gotten him fired.
Yeah, immediately.
He was usurping the power, as you point out, Mayor, of the Attorney General.
But when I read your book, Greg, I come away with the following. They're investigating, in one way or another, the President of the United States now for 2 years without a single suggestion that he committed any crime.
That's right.
We don't know what the crime is. This is an investigation in search of a crime. On the other hand, we have all these possible crimes committed by Comey. Leaking the memo, lying under oath about not being obstructed, or lying later about feeling he was obstructed, misprision of felony, the dossier in which it is clearly untrue, and they go ahead and have 3 FISA applications in which they don't explain to the judge that it's untrue or that it's a problem. Why isn't this being investigated?
It should be. I mean, this is, sort of Alice through the looking glass. Everything's backwards and upside down. Just look at the dossier, as you point out a moment ago, by Comey and others. They used a false document. They knew it was false. They deceived the judges. They concealed evidence in the case. That is a fraud on the court, as you know.
How would you like to be that FISA judge?
Oh, I'd be angry as can be.
And they pulled that on him.
Because it is the biggest felony is abuse of power, deprivation of rights under color of law. You cannot use your position in government to deprive somebody, Carter Page and President Trump, of their constitutional rights. It's also perjury. I mean, they signed a document vouching for its authenticity and veracity when they knew it was a lie.
Why wouldn't Sessions or Rosenstein, why wouldn't they start an investigation of this? What is stopping them? It almost seems like, here they can actually write a subpoena and mention crimes. Cite crimes.
Well, they'll say they got this. They went to a U.S. attorney in Utah that's going to be looking at all of this. That was kind of that's their way to handle it. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't have much trust in that. I don't know how you do an investigation in Utah of people and activities that took place in Washington, D.C. But nevertheless, I think Jeff Sessions, who is a very nice man, has been the most feckless attorney general in my lifetime. I don't think he's in charge. I think he's in a back room playing with Legos or something. The guy who's really the attorney general is Rod Rosenstein, and he has every reason to continue to obstruct Congress, hide documents, and cover it up because he's part of the wrongdoing. He signed the fourth FISA, the third renewal of the FISA document, knowing that he didn't have new evidence, and the law requires new evidence, and he also knew that it was fabricated.
Well, he also produced a memorandum recommending the termination of James Comey.
Right. Talk about conflicts of interest. The federal regulations, not to mention ethical rules that govern lawyers, say you cannot be a prosecutor and a witness in the same case.
The
rules seem to be a lot. Let's say they get a little murky when it's involving this. The
actual basis for the independent counsel is that memo of Comey's and the idea that Comey was fired as an obstruction of the investigation.
That's right.
The best witness against that is Rosenstein, who gave the president advice of counsel that he should do it.
Right. But here's the thing with putting all of that aside. So if the president of the United States decides he's going to fire the FBI director, what in the Constitution says he can't do that? In fact, the Constitution says the opposite.
There's two clauses, the take care clause and the vesting clause. Right. Both clauses allow him to fire a political appointee who is head of a branch of the executive branch of government, a department or agency.
This is all within the Article 2 of the Constitution.
That's right. And so Mueller has no legal basis as an inferior officer to question the President of the United States about exercising his constitutional authority. So that, as you guys have pointed out, should be off the table.
Isn't Rosenstein a necessary witness?
He's been interviewed by Mueller.
To the firing of Comey, since he recommended the firing of Comey?
Yeah, absolutely. He's a key witness, and he's actually been interviewed by his underling. Mueller has interviewed his own boss, which is Rod Rosenstein. That is,
but don't worry, they also want to interview, the President of the United States.
Yeah,
who's the ultimate boss under Article 2 of the Constitution, and that goes to the second part of this, which is obviously we're going through a process here. And if you look at this, by the way, historically, this is a process lawyers go through when you're talking about interviewing a president. You know what Rudy and I have been pretty clear on what our inclinations are on all this. Ultimately, the president's going to make a decision based on legal advice, and they've got a bar that I don't think they've met. Having said that, again, you look at it as a lawyer that's been practicing law a long time.
38 years.
That's right. Me,
You're
40.
too young.
40 for me.
You look
You're younger than me.
You don't want to know how long I've been practicing law. I don't remember.
Well, I'm 39.
I was back in Lincoln's era. I didn't even go to law school.
Yeah, you read the law.
Apprentice. I was
you
an
read
apprentice.
the law. So if you were in our shoes, Greg, how would you handle it?
Well, obstruction questions are completely off the table. As for collusion, I don't understand how Mueller has the right to question the president about a non-crime. As I've pointed out repeatedly, collusion is only a crime in antitrust law. It is nowhere else in the criminal codes. Now, other people have said, well, it's conspiracy to defraud the government. No, it's not. That
there has to be a conspiracy to do that.
Well, and it requires, the Supreme Court says, deceit, craft, trickery, and dishonesty.
Right.
So sitting, for example, in the Trump Tower and listening to a Russian lawyer provide information that in the end she never provided, how is that dishonest?
Ends up being about the Maginski
It's not.
Act, which is, of course...
No, and, Nancy Pelosi hauled off and said, wow, it's a clear violation of campaign laws. No, it's not. She never read the Federal Campaign Election Act, which allows a foreign national to volunteer services, including information to a political campaign, and information by itself is not a thing of value.
Well, because I actually argued Title III of McCain-Feingold before the Supreme Court of the United States.
There you go.
And that involved a lot of these issues of money and campaigns and how that worked. And I actually got the provision that I was responsible for, Title III, struck as unconstitutional 9-0. You got to look at what the law actually says, not what you wish it would say or what you hope it would say if you're trying to, go after something. What does it actually say, and what does Supreme Court precedent say? And it just does not support the interpretations that some in the media have gone with are just incorrect legally based on the statute and certainly based on the Constitution.
But it serves the media's anti-Trump narrative. Their hatred for Trump is so conspicuous every day in their coverage of this case. Their unabashed scorn and visceral hatred for the president is reflected in the bias within their stories, not only how they tell the stories, but the stories they choose to tell. I heard a media individual say, I know what it is. It's honest services fraud. That individual never read the Supreme Court decision, Skilling versus the United States, that said there has to be a bribe or a kickback.
Yeah, because the government had gone too far in making honest services just a catch-all everything.
Right.
What, they're going to try these novel and bizarre theories of campaign finance and obstruction. You're going to just determine, you're going to do the test case and have the test case on the president of the United States. I don't. First of all, there will be no case. I keep saying that because that's not how this goes. President can't have a case. That's not the way it works under our system. That's not the way the Department of Justice works.
But the media and Democrats, and I realize that's redundant, they insinuate a crime by using a word that connotes a crime, which is the word collusion.
Mm-hmm. It just sounds so nefarious.
It does.
Yeah.
You know, in fact, in my book, I quote an interview, Jay, that you did with George Stephanopoulos, in which you kept saying to him, but where is it in the criminal codes? And he said, collusion is conspiracy or something to that effect, without ever answering your legitimate question is, wait a minute.
What rule, law, or regulation has been violated here that you're colluding with?
But even conspiracy is not a crime. It's got to be a conspiracy to commit a crime.
Right. We conspire every day to have lunch or breakfast or whatever. That's not a crime.
No, but I'll tell you what's something everybody needs. Your book.
Well, thank you.
It's very helpful. It really is.
We've got a lot more coming ahead on this. And then, by the way, The Russia Hoax, it is a great book by Gregg Jarrett, and it's great to be in the studio here with Greg, in the same room, not just on a TV camera remote. So it's great doing that. All right, we're going to take calls. We've got a lot more to discuss on the Sean Hannity Show. Welcome back to the Sean Hannity Show. This is Jay Sekulow and Mayor Rudy Giuliani, former U.S. Attorney, former senior Justice Department official, in with the author, New York Times best-selling author, number one best-selling author. I want to be very clear here, Gregg Jarrett.
Thank you.
The book is The Russian Hoax. I want to go right to Greg on this, and then, Mayor, you should comment too. And that is, we're in this now, the so-called investigation has been going on now really for almost 2 years. I mean, if you look at just the kind of the time frame. Now, we've had the special counsel's been a little bit over a year and about a year and 3 months, 15 months. What do you think the public appetite for this is these days, really, in the body politic?
Well, just judging from the sales of my book, I'd say, it's very topical and people are talking about it. Even if I hadn't written the book, it is still probably the most talked about news story in America. It is day in, day out, 24 hours a day. And, frankly, every day brings new revelations of evidence of wrongdoing and corruption on the part of the investigators. These are the law enforcers who became themselves the lawbreakers.
I think got into the Bruce Orr situation in great detail. I'm sure we'll do it.
I think when the history of this is finally written, the fact that they took so long is going to hurt them, because if they had written their report 3 months ago, which they could have done, we'd have written our report, and we'd be waiting to see if Congress is going to do anything.
Right.
But the revelations, since I got involved with Jay, first of all, you have the Horowitz report, you have Peter Strzok.
Sure.
Now you have the whole dossier thing, Bruce Orr. Who knows what's next? I mean,
you don't know what's next. I mean,
it's all unraveling.
Yeah. And the American public, I just looked at the polls yesterday. The longer this goes on, the more negative the opinions are of Bob Mueller and his team of partisans. 22-point
swing in 3 months.
Right.
From trusting Mueller to not trusting Trump, trusting Trump.
And because they're finally getting the message that this is not only a team of partisans, but it was politically motivated. Mueller had 3 different conflicts of interest. Rosenstein had one glaring conflict of interest. Together they put together a team of partisans. They sabotage the integrity and credibility of their own investigation. And as you point out, Mayor, the longer it goes on, the more Americans are wising up to what really happened. Mm-hmm. It was a hoax.
Yeah. A hoax. It started as a hoax, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And their misconduct keeps coming out.
Well, it's breathtaking in scope. I mean, from the beginning of this inquiry to today, and we still are. I mean, every single day it seems like there's more and more.
That's right. You know, I point out in the book that the FBI, when they launched its investigation of Trump and collusion, they violated their own FBI guidelines known as, you guys know, the DIOG.
Uh-huh.
You've got to have articulable facts in support of probable cause. They didn't have that.
That's absolutely right. The book is The Russian Hoax. The author is Gregg Jarrett. He is our friend, a fellow lawyer, great legal analyst for Fox News. Greg, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.
We'll be back with more.
Read the book.
Read the book. We'll be back with